Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my muse, Lance LaDuke. How are you, Lance?
Musy.
Mm-hmm. Today we had a conversation with Billy Bargetzi, trombone player, educator, knucklehead. It turns out we didn't actually know him, but he came highly recommended from mutual knuckleheads, and sure enough, we hit it off. So my favorite part of the interview is that Lance and I have a conversation for like 7 minutes while he just listens at the beginning, which is great. So yeah, it's not awkward at all. So
no better way to treat your guests than to ignore them right out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. So and the interview gets real serious. He talks about you'll hear it. It's really good.
If you liked the Colin Williams episode, you're going to really like this one. He faced Bell's palsy for about 6 months, and how he overcame that is just
it's fascinating,
incredible story.
Yep.
Amazing story.
Great attitude adjuster for me, and I bet for a lot of people listening. So, yeah, really good stuff. So there are 3 ways that people can help support the podcast. The first one, Lance is going to talk about briefly, is Patreon.
Patreon is a way that you can support us financially. There are some costs associated with what we do here at the Brass Junkies, and we have a fantastic group of patrons already who are helping offset those costs. If you would like to participate, go to patreon.com, Patreon, search the Brass Junkies, and then you can contribute kind of at any amount, $1 an episode, $3 an episode, and there are different incentives there if you would like to contribute at one of the higher levels. We are in the planning stages for some hangouts for the patrons at the higher levels to participate, to see what's going on behind the scenes, and to ask some questions of our guests. We're figuring out the format of that. But it's a really nice platform and an easy way for you to help us in a financial way. And actually, one of our goals was to, when we reach the $50 per episode level, which we just passed not too long ago, we promised that we would get pictures taken holding trumpets, and we have surpassed that threshold. So sometime in the next couple of months, Andrew and I will be finding trumpets and photographers to document us holding our favorite of all instruments, the trumpet. Andrew's already in the market for a velour jacket and chain, and
it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I've already got a lot of it planned out. We just got to get in the same place. I think it'll be best if it's the photo is the two of us together. So
if you get your chest waxed,
that would that person would either want to raise or would quit afterwards. So so the second way that you can support the podcast is by going to iTunes and leaving a rating and a review. We've started to read some reviews here. One of them from Trumpet Dad, very entertaining, 5 stars, and the body of the review simply says, "Pray for Jens," so which we love. By the way, we are now on Instagram and Twitter at the handle "Pray for the number 4 Jens." Pray for Jens. So as you all know, we all pray for Jens every day. So and the third one is sharing it with a friend. So if you can tell somebody that you think might like it, post it on their Facebook wall. Tell them about the podcast in general, a specific episode. Send them to a specific spot on SoundCloud if there's some specific thing you think's funny. I just said specific a lot, which was very specific. So any of those 3 things would mean the world to us, but it's just awesome that you're listening. And I think without further ado, with a little adoing, Parker Mouthpieces provides our hosting. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable, and component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. What? And the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium Mouthpiece. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And now, with never more adoing, we are going to get to our conversation with Billy Bargetzi. And today we are joined by a trombone player, which means that we are having technical difficulties. I have no idea. Billy Bargetzi, how are you?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
We're doing well. It was pretty funny when we first connected, and then there was like this. I said, "Hey, man, how's it going?" And then he just stared for like 4 seconds, and then he said, "Good."
Which with a trombone player, you're like,
well, 3 seconds is normal, but 4 seconds is something's wrong. They're
well, I try to go that extra mile, guys.
Yeah. So we just started the podcast. It was the greatest first 90 seconds of any interview we've ever done.
Really well.
Unbelievable.
We told the secret. We told the secret to playing brass.
We did.
I don't think we can do that again, though. Really?
No. Yeah. The key to high notes in 10 minutes a day for less than a week. Yep. That's
the best
it.
trumpet mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Vaseline and Tabasco sauce. I think.
Yeah.
That's the name of my memoir, I think.
Vaseline and Tabasco sauce, the untold story of Lance LaDuke.
That's right. It'll be a scratch and sniff.
Oh.
No?
I've been there for some of the smells, and that's not anything that anybody... Actually... there was a little while. We'll get to you, Billy. Just sit tight. There was a
no problem.
There was a.
You guys go ahead.
We were. Oh, we do. We were in Finland, and I interviewed Lance for. For the A Band Director's Guide to Everything Trombone, a collection of interviews with the experts, available now from Hitz Publications.
I have that.
There you go. And Lance went on this kick for a little while. He got a jacket for Father's Day, which had like 85 zipper pockets, so that he didn't have a suitcase. Like, oh no, seriously, he had everything in it.
Bring as little as necessary.
And then he also was experimenting with bringing like less than one pair of underwear per trip, less than one pair of socks per trip, and he was like washing them. And anyway, I made the mistake on this trip. I don't even remember where we were in Finland, but he was doing me the favor of interviewing, so I said, I can come to your room. And then he said, okay. So I went to his room and I opened the door, and the smell was so unbelievable.
Yeah,
it was
bad.
It was
those. I was going with those barefoot shoes, that you don't wear. They're like, oh man, those were. I had to burn them, and they burned for 4 days.
That was absolutely. I don't know why I wasn't like, no, this is not, I'm not walking in there. I was like, well, he's doing me a favor. And so we went in, and brutal. It was brutal.
Did I tell you the story? Maybe I can't remember if I told this before, but
just sit tight, Billy.
When I was doing River City, I roomed with this guy, Dave Allman, who's a trumpet player, a dear friend, worked for a music retailer out here in Pittsburgh. And he and I were tour roommates, and I don't know, we were on a 10-day tour, and we came back to our room. He's like, why do we always get a room that smells? And I was like,
oh,
dude,
no idea.
Musician, smell thyself. Yeah, I think there's one common denominator there, Mr. Almond, and we are it.
So, Lance, should we share some more stories that have nothing to do with our guest or the trombone?
Only if they have to do with smells.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your podcast.
Yeah. And Billy is going to get rich off of this appearance, so I guess the least he can do is just sit tight. So,
this is launching my career. Absolutely.
This is so. Billy decided last week that he's going to become a professional trombone player, and so we're just trying to get in on the ground floor here. So somehow in the last week he's already got a university gig, and he's acquired quite the resume in the last week. So tell these lovely people and the non-lovely people, we have both kinds that listen, where do you teach?
I teach at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Teach trombone. Luckily, I only get to teach trombone. But I've got a nice little studio of students there. UAH is mostly an engineering school, but the music department is flourishing lately, actually. It's the 50th anniversary of the music department at UAH. And started off very humble, but has grown quite a bit, actually. So it's a nice little department.
That's great. And isn't Huntsville, if I'm not mistaken, is the Rocket City, correct?
Wow.
Indeed.
That's good.
Yes.
I didn't know you knew so much about geography.
That is a recall
fact,
to the 90 seconds that we lost forever.
There was one point where the famous line would have been Huntsville. We had a problem, but it all got moved to Houston. So
Oh,
And see, if Jeff Connor was saying it, he would say
Houston.
Huntsville.
And
We have a problem.
Huntsville.
Huntsville. To Houston.
He does. Yeah, but it's only on certain words that he doesn't say H. Like I once said, well, why don't you call me Andrew Hitz? And then he said, well, I can't say it because it'll make our producer find it and bleep it out. So Jeff swore at me a lot. He swore at me a lot.
L, Andrew.
Yeah, go to L, Andrew. I ate you. Why do you have to be so mean to me?
You're just a huge jerk.
oh,
Oh, don't feel
Oh,
bad.
listen to this. He's playing the role of Chris Castellanos. That back in the day that's when we knew that Lance and myself and Jose had had gone too far with making fun of Jeff was when Chris was always, he was like the canary in the coal mine. When Chris would go, oh man. That was when
maybe we should just go a little farther.
Yeah, well, exactly.
See,
That's
you
when
feel bad that he's not here to defend himself, but if he was here, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. So it's okay.
That's when Jose and Chris and I would all be like, or Jose Lance and I would be like, wait, do you smell that blood in the water? Yeah, and we would then move in for the kill. So
Actually, that's sort of interesting to stay with the H thing. Why can he say Jose, but he can't say Houston?
Jose.
It's the same. Like if you spelled Houston Jouston,
He would say Houston.
I would be all over it. Yeah.
Never occurred to me until just now.
Oh man.
Wow.
That's good. That's good.
Spelling.
Yeah. Scratch
Remember
and
when
sniff.
we interviewed Billy and didn't actually let him talk at all?
You know,
He thought it was great.
you know,
He thought it was hilarious.
the best part about this is that neither Lance nor I had ever spoken with Billy until like 10 minutes ago.
And now we're treating him terribly.
We would totally do this to Wes or Tom or or someone that we I was going to say no and like, but that wouldn't apply to Wes and Tom. But but yeah. So Billy, enough about you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about us and our road story some more. What's your favorite Boston Brass road story?
Well, I've listened to a lot of the Boston Brass. And, of course, I know some people who played with you guys and all that, but
Speaking of playing
let's go back in a weird direction, which is actually about you.
Yeah, you've played with a crazy
good.
number of people.
The way we found out about you is that we're good friends. Well, and actually interviewed Ari Waters on one of the episodes, and Ari's brother Ken reached out and said, "Hey man, you got to get on the show." Is Billy Bargetzi, and so we were like, "Okay, cool." And so we reached out, and then in doing research for the podcast, we haven't met, and I didn't know of you beforehand. I'm sorry, but when I read your bio, it's like the template for this is a topic or a subject that comes up frequently on our show. The notion of the portfolio career musician, and you've kind of done every aspect of the industry. You've had great opportunities to play with fantastic musicians, and I'm kind of fascinated to learn how you did that. How does that come about? How do you develop the skill set to be able to do the variety of things that you've been able to do? So you can kind of pick up the ball wherever you want to. And let's start unpacking that.
Okay, enough about Billy. Lance, let's talk some more about Jeff.
I grew up in an opera household. Actually, my parents were both opera singers, and except my dad also sang with a big band back in the 50s. And so he moved here with IBM when they were getting started on the Saturn project. And he was part of the group that did the instrument ring for the Saturn V rocket. And so when they moved here in '64, my mom started teaching voice students and all of that, and she actually ended up in the '80s creating the Huntsville Opera Theater. And so I got involved playing in opera orchestras very early, and we couldn't always get a full orchestra because it was kind of sparse at the time. And so I would end up playing other instruments' parts because trombone parts in operas are kind of sparse. So my sister would write in the second bassoon part or the fourth horn part or the third trumpet part, and I ended up playing a lot of those kinds of things. And my dad then introduced me to the idea of big band jazz with the comprehensive Kenton and Tommy Dorsey, Frank Sinatra dual album. So I started listening to everything that I possibly could. And I decided in 7th grade I was going to be a professional trombonist.
Wow.
I decided in 6th grade. No joke.
Well, oh, really?
Yeah, for real. One morning before school in the shower, I just declared to myself that I was going to be a professional tuba player. So, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, a lot of people when they get to college don't have any idea, and it seems you and I both had a good focus.
We are nothing if not focused, Billy.
Exactly.
What'd you guys say?
I started trying to play every kind of thing that I could. Big band jazz and orchestral music. I was in the youth orchestra and the concert bands. And my high school, I went to the same high school that Harry and Ken Waters both went to. They were there a little before I was, but the band program there is phenomenal. And so I had good opportunities to play really heavy-duty Hindemith Symphony in B-flat and orchestral transcriptions of Tchaikovsky and, a lot of really rich, good music. And the band was, able to pull it all off. And so I had lots of opportunities to get into the different disciplines of music that I wanted to, do. My goal was never to be, I'm going to be an orchestral musician or I'm going to be a jazz musician or I'm going to be this. I just wanted to be able to play, at any time, anything anyone said, hey, can you come do this gig? And I would say, absolutely. And I wanted to be able to be stylistically correct and, fit into the ensemble properly. That's a lot of people. I had a student actually recently who went to a major university and his focus is completely orchestral. And I'm like encouraging him to do that, but at the same time saying there's, not a lot of those jobs and you may have to do some other things. Mm-hmm. Unless he happens to land the perfect gig, which, that happens all the time. Oh, wait, no, the other thing.
So how many students do you have in UAH?
At UAH, current students at the university there, I have about 5. It's hard to get engineering students often because they've got so many scheduling conflicts. I also teach about 30 middle and high school students every week. Wow. So I've got got a pretty good base there going and getting them started, the right way before they go off into the world and are not musicians. Most of them won't be, but
Well, here's a softball. Okay. What good is it to put in the kind of time and effort on an instrument if you don't think you're going to go do it as a career?
Well, it teaches you discipline, and it teaches you how to stay focused on an idea and on a project, and develops interpersonal skills. It works on learning how to listen to other people's perspectives. It works on team building. There's so many different aspects of life that are improved by being part of a group, being in learning an instrument and learning a discipline.
Do you find that the students that you teach continue playing? I mean, I'm always chirping in my students' ears, and anyone who will listen, which isn't that many people, that whether you want to do this for a career or not, you should keep playing. You should keep it as an aspect of your life moving forward. So do you feel like you have any success in getting students to keep doing it, whether they take it up as a career or not? And if so, how?
Definitely
That's
so.
Like a challenge.
Well, I just had a student return to Huntsville. He had gone off to study at Auburn University and got an engineering degree. And Huntsville is one of the hotbeds of engineering jobs in the country. And so he moved back here to town. And I got a call from a local band that said they were looking for a bass trombonist. And I said, well, my former student just got back, and so he's now working with them. I have lots of students who will go off and continue to play, even though they're pursuing other degrees, engineering or otherwise. And I've had some that have been off the horn for 10 years, and they'll come back into town, and I say, "You're still playing, right?" And they'll say, "No." And I said, "Well, come over to this rehearsal here. We've got a community band," and they'll pick it up, and then they'll just start playing again, right off the bat. There's a transitional period, of course, but getting their face back. But they don't lose the skills.
Let's stay with that. How do you guide them? They're coming back, and what do you tell them to do?
Well, to get the initial, as far as playing again, there's the traditional long tones and lip slurs and scales, and the fundamentals of playing the horn. But as far as networking and getting involved, there are always community bands. There are always, there's a big band war going on here in Huntsville right now.
Nice.
Well, I say war. There are 5 or 6 different community big bands that are just all competing for playing with, playing around town. Huntsville is also a microbrew capital, and these microbreweries are looking for cool events to host, and so they'll host a swing dance event and bring in one of these big bands to play. And so the musicians get to play the music they enjoy. They get a little bit of a cut of the door. The swing dancers get to come in and dance to a real live band, which is always better. And so there are a lot of opportunities around the area for someone who wants to ease back into the playing world, for example, and they don't want to be, put on the spot right away. They can just sort of hide in the section until they get their face back and then get going again.
So we sort of threw you off the path. You were talking about the fact that you were just musically omnivorous. You were just sort of playing with anybody who would let you play with them. You were playing every kind of style of music, as Jeff Connor would say. Where did you go from there? So you obviously studied through high school, and then what happened?
Well, I went to University of Southern Mississippi and studied with Marta Hoffaker. She was a fantastic teacher. She encouraged her students to do as much as, they wanted to do. She encouraged jazz, although she didn't play jazz herself. The trombone choir would always have the first semester be a classical or 20th century. She loved 20th century music. And then the second semester would be the jazz semester. And she said that the first year she decided to do that, she brought in an arrangement of In the Mood, and she put it in front of the section. This is before I got there. And she counted them off, and they all played it straight as an arrow, didn't swing it at all. And she's just kind of like, what? Really?
That's what we do in brass quintets.
Right?
Yeah.
So while I was there, I played on every ensemble I could try to do. We did the wind ensemble, jazz ensemble, marching band, pep band. I played sackbut in an early music consort. Of course, we had the big trombone choir, the Hub Bones, which was a jazz trombone quintet. Hattiesburg is known as the Hub City, so we figured the Hub Bones would, be a good name. That group went on to win awards after I got out of it. Probably.
Finally, we can start winning awards.
I know. Billy's gone. Get him out of here. We had a great trombone section back in the day at Southern Miss. We were called the Killer Bees because of all of our last names begin with B. We had Bargetzi, Tom Brantley, who's South Florida. Mike Browning, who's a band director in Texas now, and Robert Bird, who teaches early music, or early meaning like elementary school.
Oh, gotcha.
Music in Texas as well. Fantastic section. We had a lot of fun with that group.
It'd be good would it be fun to teach early music to early musicians? And just imagine saying the word sackbut to a group of first graders. It'd be kind of fascinating, wouldn't it?
Oh, I know.
Just pull the pin.
Dr. Hoffaker, she had that put on her license plate, and she had to take a historical document down to the DMV to show them, no, this is not vulgar. This is...
Actually, more accurately, yes, this is vulgar. However, it is also historically accurate.
Oh, that's hilarious.
True.
So you talk about the fact that your dad sang both with big bands and operatically, and he was an engineer, I guess is what I'm picking up?
Well, he worked for IBM, but he was in purchasing.
Oh, I see.
So he was involved in acquiring all of the parts and working on that end of things rather than the actual designing and building.
Your dad purchased IBM?
No, he
Billy wouldn't be talking to us.
You're,
if that was the case.
you're filthy rich, dude.
Wouldn't
You're
that be
half
nice?
right.
But
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
He sang with a band. It was a small, big band. A
That's
couple
funny,
of trombones,
yeah.
couple of trumpets, that thing. And the leader of the band was a trumpet player named Dick Naylor, who had a very Harry James kind of a sound. And Dad sang with that group. And actually, there's a surviving recording of one of their gigs. He just happened to pull out a cassette one night. And he's like, "Oh, look at this!" And so I transferred it to digital. And it's just one of the sax players brought a recording device and set up a mic. And so I have this fantastic old recording of my dad singing when he was in his 30s. And so I'm hearing this and I'm hearing the opera, and I had a teacher one time tell me, "Well, you're going to have to choose." And I looked at him and I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Jazz or classical?" And I said, "No, I have too many examples in my life of professional musicians who didn't and do just great. And so I'm going to do what I'm going to do here."
So what was your reaction then? What happens next? I'm
sorry?
Well, how did they react? Like, what's the pushback then?
Oh, well, they didn't really say anything because they weren't expecting me to react that way, I don't think.
Oh.
They just kind of were like, up. And then the conversation ended, and we, I wasn't with that teacher very much longer. I transferred. But I just have always been the type to, I know I have limits, but I want to find out what they are. Mm-hmm. I was
That's awesome.
When I was in 8th grade, I was playing high Fs and, top of the treble clef. And my friends were like, "Why are you playing so high? You never have that music you never have those notes in your music." And I said, "Well, I don't like being limited. I want to push and find out what what I can do." So I was always trying to expand my range. I was always trying to expand my technique, and playing other people's parts in the opera orchestra got me to where I would just try to say, the band was playing Molly on the Shore, I wanted to play the clarinet part. So I would just kind of pick that up, or I would play the Till Eulenspiegel horn solo. I would try to play that, or So it was always my idea to mimic others. I want to do that too, which made them mad.
Unless you could play 1001 high Fs with a banana on your head in 8th grade, I don't think any of our listeners are going to be impressed.
Well, see, now Wes got that exercise from me.
Oh.
Yeah. See,
was that when you guys were roommates?
Yeah, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I never got to room with Wes.
I don't think, wait a minute, hold on. I don't think any human in history has ever said, "Unfortunately, I've never been able to cohabitate with Wes Funderburk." I don't think those words have ever been uttered. We're breaking new human ground here.
Well, Wes and I overlapped 1 year at North Florida, which is where I transferred to after Southern Miss. My senior year was the first year he was there, so we knew each other, but we didn't really interact a whole lot. I was in the top band; he was not quite there yet, and that kind of a thing. So we knew who each other were, but we didn't really hang out a whole lot. So, which I guess might have been good for me, according to you guys. So
doesn't that sort of smell, Andrew? Doesn't that smell to you like a statute of limitations statement?
It does.
Him. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him.
Deny.
One of his shoes.
Exactly.
All right. So, at risk of bringing it back around to a slightly more serious question.
Oh, great.
There's two components to what you're talking about in terms of your experience. Like you had the drive to learn to do these other things. A big component of what you're talking about, I mean, some of it is the execution and this sort of attitude of curiosity and open ears and a drive. But there's an undercurrent of an attitude, which is that there's this, because you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you're not supposed to do whatever. So do you feel like that is something did you always have this notion that anything was possible? And if I have an idea, I'm just going to pursue it. And how do you nurture that attitude? Dr. Tim Lutzenheiser is a dear friend and mentor to both Andrew and me, and he spends, good gracious, 300 days a year trying to convince students that their attitude is as big of a component to their success as is anything else. And that it's coming through loud and clearly that your attitude, in my opinion, your attitude has got to be the primary determinant of your success. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you cultivate that? Is that a thing you're born with? Is that a thing that you can develop? Where do you go with a thing like that?
Well, I don't really know. My parents, my family was always very supportive of anything I wanted to do. And so coming from that, it always seemed like, well, of course I can just go, do this thing. I see a lot of students that come in and they're just waiting for me to give them something to practice. And then they'll go practice it. And then they come back and say, I practiced this thing. And every once in a while, I'll get a student that comes in who will bring me something. I found this. Can you help me learn how to do this? Can you, have you seen this video by so-and-so, Christopher Bill? Or have you seen this, Maniacal 4 video of these amazing trombonists doing rock tunes? Or the Bonorama video of Houchin, where Mark Mullins has a guitar wah, pedal. The students that are curious, that are looking around, are rare. But I find often that if I can just spark a little bit of that in somebody, then they'll start to pick that up, pick up that idea. I'll say things like, that group that you really like that is different, or that, they all started because they found people that had an idea similar to theirs, and they said, we're going to do this, instead of waiting for something to, come to them, or saying, oh, well, there's no group like this, so I guess that shouldn't exist, or, that kind of an idea.
Mm-hmm. I just finished reading. Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
For myself, like I said, when I didn't have a specific idea in mind of what I wanted to do, other than I just, I'm going to be a professional trombonist. And private teaching, to me, because I had an excellent example of this in my mother, having voice and piano students coming every day. That was just a natural thing for me to do, because I had this, fantastic every day reinforced, this is how you teach someone how to do something. Her students all, they were always worried, are you not listening to the lessons? And we're like, oh, no, of course not. And of course we were, because you can't not.
Yeah, right.
But it just seemed like the natural thing for me to try to do as much as I could. Now, I'm a natural mimic. I like to imitate people, and that annoys them often. But,
that's hugely annoying.
I'll hear somebody do something, and I'm like, yeah, I could probably, or, learn how to do that, and then I'll do it. And, I learned pretty quick to kind of hide that from a lot of situation I'd be in, or people would get upset. But it was always something I enjoyed doing. I want to play that French horn part, or I want to play that violin solo, or that cello piece, or that bassoon thing, or that, why can't the trombone do that thing?
That's right. Well, and this continual, I keep hearing you say over and over again that you're not supposed to be able to do X, Y, Z, as David Jobs would say, is something you didn't really concern yourself with, and not in an offensive way or a bullheaded way, but just like, well, why is that the case? Like, I want to be able to play that line. It's music, and I think it would sound fine on my instrument, or I want to try that. That's pretty cool. So I was starting to say, I read this book called what in the world was it called? The Talent Code. I just finished it. And it talks about how learning happens, and this substance in your brain, white matter, called myelin. And it kind of, it explains that in order for there to be the kind of learning that you're talking about, there needs to be three things. And one is very effective just-in-time coaching, One is deep practice, but the other is a spark, and that spark is the thing that you're talking about, not only in yourself, but in those students who bring you a thing. So it's really kind of caused me to think about my students in a different way and look for where are those sparks. And that's, I think, we're all trying to, those of us who teach are all trying to figure out better and more efficient ways to get at those students and get them where they can go. Do you feel like that attitude has informed how you teach? I mean, because you had that, how does that impact you in the teaching studio?
Well, every student is different. I see some teachers who always have their students work at this thing, and then they always move to this book, and then they always do these exercises. I've never been that kind of teacher. I tend to react to what the student is giving me. When the student comes in and they'll bring in a piece and they'll have an articulation issue or a breathing issue, I'll use that piece, whatever it is, their band music or jazz band music or all-state audition, to work on that aspect of their playing. And then once I get to know the student just a little bit, I'll usually ask them, well, what kind of music do you like? And they always look at me like it's a trick question. How am I supposed to answer this question, right? What's the right answer to this? And I said, well, there's not a right answer. Everything you listen to informs your musical brain on how you're going to, do what you're doing, how you're going to play your music and all this. And so I want to find the thing that resonates with you.
That's great.
And so then, it's like pulling teeth sometimes, but other times they just come right out with, oh, well, I like classic rock, or I like, band music. I have a student who loves marches. So, we'll start listening, because that's another question that always comes up. How do I learn how to do this better? Or how do I learn how to do that better? And my answer is listen. And they always look disappointed because, well, they want a pill they can take, or they want to, if you get this book and do it, then you're going to be this musician. But listening is the key to everything. So
it's all data. It's
huh?
Sorry, what? Did you?
Sorry, what? Look, I passed over Dick Naylor. If I'm going to let Dick Naylor just lay there and not comment on it, I'm going to go. I've got to go in another direction.
He's an amazing trumpet player. So yeah, I know.
A trumpet player named Dick Naylor. That is the world is a funny place sometimes. I always tell. I was shocked that Lance actually let that slide. He was just waiting 15 minutes for random recall.
I was expecting a little bit of something on that.
Oh, well, see, you don't, because we were having Skype issues because you play the trombone for a living, and that's the way that it works on the Brass Junkies. You don't have video on. Lance actually had to turn all the way around in his swivel chair and was like doubled over laughing in silence. So there you go.
That's the usual reaction with that name. He was a very nice man and a great musician, but yeah, that's just unfortunate.
It's I call it all data, right? It's like that the great playing and not great playing, it's all data, and that's why you have to see as much live music as you possibly can. And as teachers, we all know that boy, if you have a student who is playing really well but is not, for example, having really great ends of notes, right sides of notes, like at the ends of phrases, that you can't help but pay attention to that just a little bit more in your own playing.
Right.
that all of that informs, and it's bad data, not in a judgmental way. It's just, you hear the ends of notes when Scott Hartman plays and you go, I want to end my notes like that. You hear it when a student plays and it's not as good. I don't want to end my notes like that. And it's all data, and you have to collect it, and nobody can collect it for you, which is probably why students are bummed that you're telling them to listen, because you're telling them to go collect data, and that doesn't sound easy. And it is, though. You just got to do the work.
Exactly. And a lot of band directors and teachers focus on the beginning of the note. I'm articulating this properly, and they don't, then the student just says, okay, I did it right. And that's right. The only way to really hear that is to hear it.
Yep.
And,
yes, indeed.
So I tell my students who want to go in and teach, I say, what the hardest, sorry?
Nope, no, sorry, go ahead. We had a little bit of a connection problem because you play the trombone.
The hardest part about teaching is learn to explain what you know. And so, I have occasional students who want to go off and teach, and they'll come to me and like, I have a student that's doing this. What do I do? And I say, well, how do you know how to not do that thing? And they say, oh, and so they have to then figure out how to present it. But
sometimes the natural players can be not very good teachers. I think we all know people who are supernatural players who can play anything you put on their stand. Some who can play anything that you just whistle to them, and they can play it immediately in 12 keys, and yet then they can't teach very well because they never had to go through the, they never had to be doing the work in a laboratory themselves. So, and some can overcome that, but that's why not all. That's why I always tell anybody who's looking where they're going to go to school. It's like, especially for a performance degree, it's my goodness, you have to get on a plane and go and have a lesson with the person because they might be able to play the absolute, what out of the trumpet or flute or violin or whatever, but they might not be able to teach it, as well as, as any of the other private teachers who are teaching elementary, middle, and high school students can in the same town. Without the quote-unquote famous, resumes. So let's talk a little bit about, speaking of resumes, let's talk a little bit about all of the people that you have played with, because it's a pretty awesome. You play with the Huntsville Symphony, you play in the brass band of Huntsville, you play in brass choirs, you play in the Tuscaloosa Horns, which you've appeared with the Temptations and the Four Tops and the OJs, Wayne Newton, Natalie Cole. What's it like getting to play with artists of that caliber in a horn section like that? And can you talk to us a little bit about the process of do you have, is it always written out charts ahead of time? Do you ever have to come up with horn lines, and what does like a rehearsal like that go? And I'm sure they're all slightly different, but just in general, since most of us have never experienced anything like that.
Well, with the Tuscaloosa horns, it's always written. You always show up for a sound check, and there's an occasional rehearsal. Generally speaking, though, you're expected to just be able to read it right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And so if they're running a new chart or something, they'll have a rehearsal. But usually if you show up, there's a 10 or 15-minute sound check, and then you have a break before the performance, and then you just go. So the other horn players go out of their way, if there's a new person, to try to explain, the road maps or where the pitfalls are. Don't this section repeats 3 times. Don't go on to the next thing, or you'll step in this hole, that kind of stuff. So they're very generous with that. Because occasionally you'll go play with a section and they'll be like, well, let's see how this guy does, and they won't try to help you all. But the Tuscaloosa horns are always very good about that.
Wow, that's rough.
Generally you get a call and you go down and you meet the guys, and then we all get on a van and drive to Texas or to Louisiana or to wherever the gig is. And you get there, sound check, eat dinner, play the gig, and stay over and come back, or go to the next gig. Or so it's definitely a lot of emphasis on sight reading, which is great because that's something I push a lot with my students. It has, helped me out tremendously, the ability to just pick up. And I've found lately, I think I heard you guys talk about this on a previous podcast, that there's been less of an emphasis on sight reading lately for military bands and for other situations. And I still push it hard because, I'll look at my students and say, well, I just played a gig this past weekend with so-and-so, and they'll be like, well, what, did you rehearse? And I said, no, I'm just expected to be able to play it right the first time. And I'll have students come in. Like, I remember I had a student call to say, are we having a lesson today? And I said, yes. He says, good, I'm ready to perform my all-state pieces. I said, that's fantastic. So he came in and he played the first one, and it was unrecognizable. And I said, hold on. And then I played it for him, and he played it again, and it was 95% better. It was, he missed a note or two. And I said, well, what's the difference between now and before? And he says, oh, well, I know how it goes now. And I was like, but you said you were ready to perform, and that generally means you know how it goes.
Let me quote you here.
So the Tuscaloosa horns is very much a reading gig. The Alabama horns, however, is another horn section I play with. It's Ken Waters and myself and a saxophone player named Brad Ewan. And we do a lot of recording in the Shoals and down in Birmingham and other things like that. In fact, we had a session just recently that was unfortunately postponed with Smash Mouth. They were coming to the Fame Studios, and they wanted a horn section, so they had flight problems or something, so they had to postpone it. But I'm looking forward to that. And those gigs are often, they'll play the track and we'll kind of sit for a second, and one of us will come up with a line and we'll harmonize it, and then we'll record it, and then we'll listen to another part of the track and come up with something and record it. Or occasionally we'll listen beforehand and write something out. But often it's just off the fly, off the cuff. Okay, this sounds good here, do that. Oh, wait, no, change your note to an F sharp. All right, good. And then just, that kind of stuff.
Hey, speaking of Smash Mouth, I'm not sure if you're on Twitter at all, but you can't make this up. Smash Mouth is in like the official verified band Twitter account, and the Oakland Athletics, the baseball team, got into a Twitter feud back in October.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, it's quality. Everybody should Google Smash Mouth Twitter feud. They told the A's that the A's suck, and then the A's came back at them. I guess, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. When the A's come back at Smash Mouth with a tweet that says, "Guess you've got it all figured out except how to make a hit since 1999." I mean, it's like
that's pretty good.
And then Smash Mouth came back at them, and I mean, it's just pretty good stuff.
Man.
Yeah.
See, they were looking for the right horn.
Not there yet. I thought you were going to talk about yens.
Oh.
And one other thing I wanted to bring up. Speaking of mouth, and this isn't listed on my bio or anything. I moved back to.
It's implied that you have a mouth. I don't think you have to put that in your bio.
I moved back to Huntsville in 2004 because my dad's health was not great. I had been working in New Orleans and Destin and all over the place doing a 5-night-a-week horn section band type of thing. But I moved back to Huntsville, and by the way, that was with some amazing musicians, trumpet players, Steve Reed, John Reed, Scott Frock, who's playing with Sturgill Simpson now, just some amazing music, Jay Webb,
Dick Naylor,
John Robinson. And I wish Dick would have been great on that band. Anyway, so I've been home for several years and developing my studio and started to pick up work with Tuscaloosa Horns and the Huntsville Symphony and all that. And then I got hit with Bell's palsy.
Good gravy.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. Yeah. 2011, Labor Day weekend. I had got the Mozart Requiem coming up and some other things and solo appearances and several dates with the symphony, and then I woke up and was going to warm up, and I couldn't play above an F.
Wow.
That day, and then the next day was completely gone. The left side of my face just said nope, and that's something else.
So
but
was it stress related?
I had an impacted wisdom tooth.
Oh.
That there was a bit of an abscess, and it's the nerve that controls all those muscles comes out of a canal just like ahead of your ear, and so it was right in that area. And we're thinking that that's what it was. It had stressed my immune system enough that it allowed the infection to get to that nerve.
Wow.
And
wow.
I kept telling myself I was going to get to this. I was going to get to this. I was going to get to this. And then it decided you're going to get to it now. So, and so it was Labor Day. It was like September 7th. And so I couldn't play again until Easter. I mean, I gradually started picking tiny little bits of things up. So it was 7 or 8 months before I had my first real gig.
Wow.
And I had to completely relearn how to get the left side of my face to work. And I actually ended up with something called synkinesis, where the nerves rewire themselves incorrectly. So as I compress my chops, as I compress my corners, my left eye starts to close. And I get a little bit of a pull on my neck and stuff like that. So it's been interesting. But a lot of people react to that. And I've had friends who've gone through Bell's palsy and they didn't play anymore. And here's this thing I've been training for 30 years, and I'm a specialist, and I'm gonna get it back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was always my attitude. And so I scraped and clawed and practiced my way back into playing again. But
okay, I got 1,000 questions. So
okay.
Emotionally, this happens, and I'm assuming it's probably like the stages of grief. Like first you're in denial, and then you get really angry, and finally. So tell me emotionally, like what do you go through, and how do you persevere? It's
devastating. This is my identity, and so it's like having your identity completely ripped away from you.
Mm-hmm.
If you catch it quick enough, there are steroids that you can take that diminish the effect, and I didn't catch it quick enough.
Oh boy!
Wow.
So I didn't get to the doctor in time. I didn't, So because I'd had a friend, a flute player, who said he had Bell's palsy, but after a couple of weeks he was okay, which makes me wonder if it was really that or not.
Really
but
yeah.
Considering the severity of mine.
A friend of mine has it right now, and she's not a musician, but it's been, months, and she's nearly back. But it's like you said, much more along that 5-6 months window.
Right. So, yeah, it was devastating. I took a couple videos of myself, trying to move the muscles of my left side of my face and trying to smile and seeing if there was any movement at all, and it was a couple of months before I saw anything. I continued to teach. One thing I found interesting was that it even affected the muscles inside my ear. The first lesson that I sat down in to teach, I was sitting on the right and my student was on the left, and he played a note and it sounded like 120 decibels right away, because apparently there are muscles in your ear that protect you from loud noises, and they were dead.
Wow.
So I had to wear an earplug in my left ear when I taught, because it was, overwhelmingly loud.
This is crazy.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you not get? I mean, I still don't. How did you not get bummed out and depressed? And like, why didn't you give up? Why did you take this? I'm going to videotape myself and look for a millimeter of movement. Like, why did you stick with it?
I did get depressed. And I did think about alternatives. Like I said, I'm not an engineer, but I'm on the spectrum. So I thought about possibly getting into working with computers and other things like that. But I just, I had just spent a whole bunch of money on buying a new horn, and I was really focused on, where my playing career was going and doing more recording and other things like that. And I just didn't want to give up at all. I couldn't give up. I had the drive to just, screw this. I'm not going to let it win.
Well, and you grew up in a household and with an attitude of, this is the thing I'm interested in and I'm driven to go do. And so, it's, imagine if you were that person that thought the only path for me is I have to play in an orchestra, and you're just like hardwired into that box. I suspect that an attitude like that may have made it more difficult. I don't know, maybe not. I'm making stuff up, but I can't help but think that your attitude, back to the attitude thing, was a key part of the drive to get up again tomorrow and look in the mirror again and see if there's any movement.
Absolutely.
Good for you. Holy moly, man. What an amazing thing. So now can we go back down that path musically? So how did you come back? Like it sounds like you just getting any kind of movement to happen was first, and then what's that progression? So let's say, because I think we interviewed Colin Williams, who had a pretty severe injury, and he talked about how he came back from that, and we've gotten a lot of really positive response about that episode and how helpful it was to people. And I'm so grateful that you're talking about this and are willing to share it. So can you get into the nuts and bolts of what do you do? You buzz on a mouthpiece? You just blow? Do you try? What do you do to come back?
Well, I was one that was always aware of my embouchure muscles. A lot of people, they just kind of put their horn up on their face and they play and they don't pay attention. My teacher at Southern Miss, Dr. Hoffaker, was never a technical horn instrument, gearhead type of person. She was concerned about the music that came out. Mm-hmm. But I've always been one that paid attention. I had when I was growing up, I had several different, embouchure sets. I would set for high notes and set for low notes and that kind of thing, which I ended up resolving into, more of the Reinhardt pivot method to an extent without realizing that was what I was doing. But so I was always aware of my face. And when I was starting to get movement back or get any kind of control back at all, I would do very, very simple mouthpiece buzzing. And I always had this exercise that I would do when there were times where I weren't able to play for like a weekend. I would do what I called lip crunches, which is, whatever, a silly name, but it was a kind of exercise that worked on the muscles so that I wouldn't lose any endurance. That was one of the big things, you lose if you take time off. You can still pick up the horn and play, but your endurance is gone. So I would always work on those. So I would try to, get the exercises going and work, try to move the muscles so I could get some control back. After 3 or 4 months, when it was around Christmas time, I actually tried to play a gig because, my income was still good with students, but, a lot of my income was also performing. And so that time of year is always difficult, money-wise. And so this guy, one of the local school orchestra directors, had a church gig up in Tennessee, and he says, well, why don't you come up and try to play second and, do the best you can. And so there were times where I had to, with my left hand, hold the left side of my face to keep air from escaping. And the right side of my face was fine. It was, it knew what it was supposed to do. But that was a very traumatic experience because I couldn't play above the staff. And I'm a high note guy. That was one of my, part of my identity was being able to play double B flat. And now I'm having trouble playing on the staff. But it was progress. I couldn't do that a month ago. So I said, okay, well, this is moving in the right direction. I can do this. I can wait it out. And, kept going and kept pushing. And I think part of the synkinesis happened because I was pushing too hard, because when the muscles that were supposed to work didn't, other muscles would kind of try to tie in and help. And
right.
So now, there's physical therapy that you can do to disassociate the muscles, but I've found it to be not as much of a deterrent as I thought it would be. I can deal with it. The biggest thing I noticed.
Oh, go ahead.
The biggest thing that I notice about the synkinesis is if I'm playing in the upper register, say around high G or high B flat, and I have to articulate a lot, my eye tries to close every time I tongue. And
wow.
So it doesn't completely close, but it makes the notes bounce a little bit. So if I'm going, da, 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 the notes are like moving a little bit, but so
my eyes
I don't
closed,
do the
but
high
it's
F
mainly in
exercise.
disgust at the sounds that are coming out of my horn.
And the people he's playing with.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Oh boy. Wow, man. Well, we're just about out of time here. There's so
great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, what an inspiring. This is very similar to Colin's episode. If any of you have not heard the Colin Williams episode 26, it's phenomenal. Like, go listen to it.
I'll have to go back and check that out. Yeah.
Both of you. Not in any way to minimize because I don't even know what I don't know about this process in terms of the physical side of things, but what really jumps out at me is just the attitude that both of you, like Lance was asking about, getting frustrated and stuff. I mean, the attitude that both of you exhibited when you were faced with this problem, and it's what both of you did for a living, and you both were like, I'm going to solve this on the easy days. I bet you there were some days when it was easier to say that, and some days when it felt like you were going backwards, that it was probably really hard.
There were some pretty dark days.
There had to have been.
Really
I can't imagine. So that's boy, I'm a human, which means I've got problems today. We all do, but the tiny crap I'm dealing with, compared to that is it's pretty. It's like you hear somebody who's like fighting like serious illness, terminal illness, and they're like only worrying about other people, So
right.
And then I'm getting pissed because the left turn arrows in Virginia are like 4 minutes long. So if you miss one, it's like makes your 20-minute drive 40 minutes if you miss 3 of them. So try that math.
That would bug me too.
Yeah, exactly. So, cool. Well, so speaking of setbacks, this is the perfect guy to ask, right? Our dear friend Jens Lindemann, who's going through some. I don't think he's been able to quite identify it yet. It might be like a specific Canadian ailment that he's suffering from.
He's on multiple spectrums.
He's on a spectrum of spectrums. Right. So Jens is going through some chop problems. So we're wondering if you could, as a literal expert in this, could you offer Jens some encouragement, some words of wisdom?
Well, sure. I would say to Jens, visualization is the key to understanding the flow of the embouchure and the air, and really focus on visualizing what the note should sound and feel like, and then go from there, moving forward in that respect. Also with the magic salve, the Vaseline and Tabasco sauce that we were talking about earlier. I think that would be very helpful.
So hold on. I want to put the dots close together. You have to put them close together for Jens sometimes. So do you apply the Vaseline and the Tabasco sauce and then visualize, or do you visualize? And if so, does it go in your eyeballs, or does this go in your chops?
No. Mostly on the valve caps, I would say.
So that's why you use heavy valve caps, is because you can fit more Vaseline.
No, I understand. Yeah,
you have worked with trumpet before, haven't you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's one we haven't gotten yet. Vaseline and Tabasco on the valve caps, and then visualizing success.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Jens could become a reality TV star if he would just do one episode executing each of these. Yeah, I can't wait for Mark Jenkins's Do Hard Drugs. That'd be a good one. And who told him to punch himself in the face? That was also somebody that I didn't expect. It was like someone who was actually nice.
Yeah.
I don't.
Scott Hartman, was it?
It might have been Scott. I don't remember. I was somebody.
Maybe he should just visualize punching himself in the face. That might
I do. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, I do that all the time, and my chops are fine. So there you go. Okay, good. So it's not many podcasts that can as awkwardly segue from that very serious conversation to Lance bragging about visualizing punching one of his friends in the face. So
this is a very special podcast.
It is. It is. Yeah, we are proud of it. Yep. And
we haven't said Dick Naylor in a few minutes. I just wanted to point that out.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, we asked Billy what to plug, and he wanted to plug that you said that University of Alabama Huntsville is, as you said before, celebrating its 50th anniversary, and there's a whole bunch of concerts and things that are going along with that. And so we're going to link to the website there that talks all about that celebration. And Billy, this has been I have to admit, my favorite part of the interview was the first 8 minutes where Lance and I just chatted. but the rest of it was pretty good too.
That was my favorite too, actually.
Yeah, having you.
The listeners are like, do they realize that they have a guest on right now?
We haven't heard anything from the guest.
And this is after we blather, and we recorded afterwards. But this is after we blather in an intro. So there's like the intro for this one's going to be an intro to the intro. which was just the second intro is which is the actual intro is the one where the guest just listens to us. So yeah, it soaks up. It's all data, right, Billy? It's data. So you know what? If I ever host a podcast that's an interview show, I'm not going to do this. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekend to join us. And
well, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Great.
That's great, Billy. Thank you so much.
Lance, thank you too. I mean, really,
no, thank you.
Really, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate all that you try to do. So that will do it for another episode of Thank You, Lance, the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Joey Santillo. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.